Well, the first game of the Kelvin Shepherd and the John Morton era has officially gone down as a loss. And I don't think I've ever seen the fan base more upset than what they are right now. I don't think I've ever seen fans more down on this team since maybe the start of the Dan Campbell era back in 2021. And there were a lot of things that were not good. The offense wasn't very explosive. The offensive line didn't protect very well. The defense didn't start very well. The quarterback play wasn't great. The offensive play calling wasn't great. The run game certainly was not there. And there were a lot of issues in this game that the Detroit Lions have to deal with and fix going into week 2 against the Chicago Bears. But the good news is I think everything that we saw that was bad a week ago can be fixed. Everything that was bad at Lambeau Field, I think, is fixable for the Detroit Lions. I think they have the system in place to make sure it's right by week 2. Now, with that being said, I also think it goes over a lot of people's heads that the Green Bay Packers are a very good team. I know that the Detroit Lions swept them a year ago. They've been, I think, 6-1 or 5-1 against them over the last 3 seasons, and it's been a good ride against the Packers, right? Lions fans have gotten comfortable winning in Lambeau. They've gotten comfortable beating Green Bay. They've gotten comfortable winning these divisional games, expecting that to be the reality, where the reality actually is that Green Bay is a very good football team. I still believe the Detroit Lions are a better overall football team, but Green Bay is one of those teams that will take the Detroit Lions every single time. They will beat the Detroit Lions. They will kick their butts if the Lions give them an inch, and the Lions gave them more than an inch on Sunday, and it led to a really humiliating loss. But that does not mean that the Detroit Lions are done for the season. That doesn't mean the Detroit Lions can't get better throughout this game, and that doesn't mean that their season is over in any sense of the term. Remember, there are games like this: Baltimore from 2023, Tampa Bay from a year ago, Chicago from 2 seasons ago, where they went there, they scored 12 points at Soldier Field and looked awful for that entire game. And then a week later, they bounced back, cut up 45 points and looked like an elite offense yet again. These types of games happen. These types of games especially happen in week 1, and even more especially happen on the road against a really good divisional rival. Now, I'm not going to excuse anything the Detroit Lions did poorly, because they did not play very well, but I think there is some room for error, and I do not think there is as much warranted doom and gloom as a lot of Lions fans are putting out. So let's take a look at what actually happened during the game, because I think that things get a little better when you actually look at it within context and actually look at the solid numbers. Now, the Detroit Lions started off really poorly. They were outscored 10-0 in the first quarter, and that really set the tone for this game. They were able to score in the third quarter, or in the second quarter. They were able to go into halftime down by 17-3, so down 14 points. And in the second half, they actually tied Green Bay. The passing attack was a little better. They went on a couple long drives. They had a couple explosive plays, and they were moving down the field. They actually moved down the field quite well. The problem was the red zone scoring, and that's not a surprise against a pretty good Green Bay Packers team. Now, Jared Goff, despite his interception, did throw 31 for 39 for 225 yards. He did throw a touchdown at the end of the game, and of course, threw that interception in the red zone. Now, that interception, in my opinion, isn't necessarily a bad play by Goff, more so a fantastic play by Nixon, the defensive back. It was a quick pressure from Micah Parsons. Jared Goff got the ball out quick to his first read, his quick alert read after the blitz, and the cornerback jumped it. That's really the reality of what happened. It wasn't a bad read. It wasn't a bad throw. It was simply a fantastic play from the Green Bay Packers to take that football away in the end zone to end the half. If that play doesn't happen, I think the game turns out a little bit differently. The Lions may not win, but I think it's far more competitive down the stretch. I think the Detroit Lions, if they're able to even score a field goal on that drive, they come out in essentially a 10-point game, 11-point game. They can drive down. They have a chance at a touchdown to make things a little better. And I think that momentum swings a little bit more if the Detroit Lions score on that drive. So that is a big play. That is a 7 to 10 point swing right there for the Detroit Lions in that first drive. And I think that changed the outcome of the other drives throughout the game as well. Despite that interception, like I said, Jared Goff was 31 of 39. He was efficient. He was delivering the ball very well. He was accurate, didn't miss a ton of throws, and in my opinion, looked quite good despite not really pushing the ball down the field all that often. Now, the running game is where things were really disappointing. 22 carries for 46 yards. David Montgomery got 11 carries for 25 yards, and Jahmyr Gibbs got 9 carries for 19. It was not a good day on the ground for the Detroit Lions. And full respect for the Green Bay Packers run defense. I was somebody who had thought they weren't very good. And honestly, I still don't know how good they will be, but they dominated the Detroit Lions up front. And sometimes that just simply happens. Again, that happened on Thanksgiving against Green Bay a couple years ago. That happened in Chicago in 2023. That happened in Baltimore in 2023. The Lions just sometimes go on the road and they get out physical. They get out muscle. That happened in Carolina in 2022. It happened in Tampa Bay, or I guess home against Tampa Bay in week 2 of last year. These types of games happen, and yes, it's a really disappointing way to start the season, but I don't think it's necessarily the end-all be-all for what the Detroit Lions team can accomplish in 2025. Receiving-wise, I thought Jared Goff distributed the ball quite well. Sam Laporta had 6 receptions for 79 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown went 4 for 45. Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 receptions for 31 yards. Jameson Williams had 4 for 23. David Montgomery, 4 for 18. Khalif Raymond got involved. And of course, Isaac Tesla had his incredible touchdown grab towards the end of the game. Defensively, it started off really poorly, right? The Lions went 3 straight drives allowing touchdowns or field goals, and they didn't look very good. But in the second half, I thought they looked much better. They were getting a little bit of pressure on the quarterback, not a ton, but they didn't allow any points in the third quarter. And the touchdown and field goal they did allow in the fourth quarter was because of a punt return after the offense went nowhere that set the Green Bay Packers to start their drive inside the 40. And then the field goal came after a 4th down failure at their own 30-yard line. So both scoring drives that they allowed in the second half were set up by poor positioning on the offense and were likely going to give up points regardless. So I think the defense bounced back pretty well. I think the defense had a pretty good game plan switching up in the second half. And I thought they played much better in the secondary. I thought they played much better on the defensive line, the linebacking core, and they were truly just a couple plays away from flipping this game on its head. And we'll get into that a little more in just a bit. Returners weren't very good. Khalif Raymond didn't have a whole lot of room. Kick returns weren't fantastic. Kicking was fine. Jake Bates was 2 for 2 with an extra point, 7 points on the day, and Jack Fox punting was fine. Right. But really overall, I thought the Detroit Lions just came out with a lack of urgency. They just came out like they expected to win this game when they really didn't have the opportunity to win this game at any point in time. Jordan Love wasn't under a whole lot of pressure throughout this game. The pass rush really wasn't very good. And I think a lot of it was more schematically an issue than it was talently an issue, right? They were dropping Aiden Hutchinson into coverage. They were dropping Marcus Davenport into coverage. They were dropping so many different players trying to get this exotic look, trying to be fancy, trying to be cute. And it just didn't work for the Detroit Lions. And I don't think that type of defense works for the Detroit Lions, right? I don't think you should ever be dropping Aiden Hutchinson into coverage. I don't think you should ever be dropping Marcus Davenport into coverage because that's not their role. You don't get to the quarterback by having your best pass rusher moving away from the quarterback, right? The run defense was fantastic. The run defense up till probably the final 5 to 6 minutes was really, really good for the Detroit Lions. They shut down Josh Jacobs for a majority of the game. He had 19 carries for just 66 yards. And overall, the Green Bay Packers had 25 rushes for just 78 yards and a touchdown. Not a bad day on the ground for the Detroit Lions, but obviously you want to take away the passing attack just as much as you take away the rushing attack. Moving over to the team statistics, the Detroit Lions started by giving up 4 straight third down opportunities, right? The Green Bay Packers converted 4 straight third downs to open the game, but at the end of the game, the Detroit Lions got a little bit better. I don't know if the statistic is on here, but at one point at the end of the game, they were, I believe, 4 for 7 on third down, meaning they went 3 straight drives getting off the field on third down. And overall, I thought they were better, right? The Green Bay Packers went 4 for 10 on third down in this game. They started 4 for 4, meaning of the last 6 drives, the last 6 defensive drives of the game that they had a third down opportunity, the Detroit Lions got off the field. The issue is, well, they were themselves 5 for 15 on third down. Not what you want to see from the offense. They were pretty good on fourth down, but the Green Bay Packers were 1 for 1, and the penalties absolutely killed the Detroit Lions in this game. They were sloppy. They didn't pass protect very well. They didn't run the ball very well. And the Green Bay Packers, credit, did a fantastic job taking away the identity of what the Detroit Lions like to do. The Lions couldn't run the ball. They couldn't protect Jared Goff on the interior. And if you can do those two things against Detroit, they're going to put up 13 points. And regardless of how good the defense may be, regardless of what performance they may have put out in the second half, if you're putting up just 13 points in a game, you will probably lose that game in the NFL more times than you will win it. With that being said, I think the Detroit Lions can get better. I think the Chicago Bears interior is not nearly as strong as the Detroit Lions. I don't think they have a pass rusher nearly as talented as Micah Parsons or Rashawn Gary on that defensive line in Chicago. They should be able to run the ball a little bit better than what they did. And hopefully we'll be able to pass protect on the interior much better than they did versus the Green Bay Packers. And truly, I think that is what it comes down to. I think at the end of the day, the Lions season lives and dies by the interior of the offensive line. Graham Glasgow did not have a great day. Christian Mahogany did not have a great day. Tate Ratledge did not have a great day. And that is what caused the Detroit Lions downfall more so than anything. It handcuffed John Morton to not be able to call deeper developing plays, not allow him to call those shot plays that he wanted. And I think that there were just a lot of things that went into this loss, right? The Detroit Lions didn't play in the preseason, so they were rusty. Their interior offensive line is new and young, and they were facing a very good Packers pass rush, and that gave them a lot of issues. That limited the play calling, that, really hurt them on the offensive side of the ball, but I think that they will be okay. Quarterback was efficient. The tackles were okay. They played a great pass rush, probably one of the best pass rushes they're going to play all season right off the bat. It was tough. It was week one. It was a divisional rivalry game. And there are a lot of excuses that you can make. And I don't want to make excuses for the Detroit Lions, but I also don't want to hit the panic button just yet. Jared Goff looked sharp and on point. That one interception, again, I don't really put on Jared Goff, more so just a great play from them. So you take that away, and Jared Goff is 32 or even 31 of 38. A great completion percentage, a touchdown, just wasn't really explosive on the day outside of a few hitters here and there. But despite how dominant the Packers seemed in this game, they really weren't. And they were, right? The Packers won this game handedly. They won this game essentially in the first half. But I think if you take a look at really how close the Detroit Lions could have been to flipping this game on its head, you look at obviously the interception at the end of the first half that really took points off the board for Detroit. If they score a touchdown there, they go in down by just 7 as opposed to down by 14. You come out of that half, you look at the pick 6 by Brian Branch. That was a fantastic diving play. The pressure got there, but it was taken away from a holding call. Okay, well, right there, that is a 14 point swing based on the results of the drive. The Packers then don't get their points, but the Detroit Lions, of course, get on the board. That would have put the Detroit Lions essentially tied with the Green Bay Packers, even with the interception in the end of the half. And you look at the Alex Anzalone interception that was dropped. You look at a couple other plays that just didn't quite go the Detroit Lions' way. And I don't think they were that far away from winning this game. They were unlucky at certain points. They obviously didn't come out as intense or as hot as they potentially could have, but there were plays to be made. There were opportunities to win this game, even in the second half, even in the third quarter, even in the fourth quarter. There were chances to win this game from the Detroit Lions, and they did not take advantage of that opportunity. But it's week one. Things were a little sloppy. Things are always a little sloppy for the Detroit Lions for the first couple of weeks. And truly, even if they start 0-3, I think they will bounce back. I think they will be okay this year. John Morton showed that his offense can be efficient. His offense can sustain long drives. He just has to add the explosive element. Kelvin Shepherd showed his defense can pitch a shutout in the second half. His defense can make a stand and turn the things over and get off the field on third down. Now they just have to show that they can get to the quarterback, that they can, get to the passer just as well as they get to the running back when it comes to stopping the run. So the key takeaways and the key improvements that need to be made for next week for offense, they need to, 1, find their explosive play, and 2, be far more efficient in the red zone. If they can do those 2 things, they will look just as good as the Ben Johnson offense. For the defense, they have to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback. They have the talent. Marcus Davenport can do it. Hayden Hutchinson can do it. Tyleik Williams can do it. Derek Barnes can get there. They can blitz. They can cover. They can do things very well in this defense. They just have to have that sense of urgency that they seemingly lacked for the first half versus the Green Bay Packers. If they can do that even a little more consistently, I think they will be okay on defense. And even if they don't, even if they perform like they did a week ago, I still think they'll be okay on the defensive side of the ball. They are more talented than last year. And honestly, this was not the worst performance we've ever seen out of the Detroit Lions defense. They were not nearly as bad as they were a year ago. They were not nearly as bad as they were for several games in 2023. I think first game calling plays is always going to be tough on every coordinator, and it was tough for the Detroit Lions coordinators. John Morton got a welcome to the NFL moment. Kelvin Shepherd got a welcome to the NFL moment. I think they both showed some positive traits as well as some of the negatives, and overall, I'm excited to see what they do next week. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below your biggest takeaways and your level of concern. I'd be very curious to your guys' opinions. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.